Hello? We'll ask. Okay, I will ask. And that's a good point. Yeah, no, very rarely, as I said, only as like a teaser would there be a multiple choice. I once put one that had like A through L as possible answers, but it was a joke. So yeah, fill in the blank. Some short, essay type. These are the types of questions.
We do the test in class?
Yeah, the test will be in class. So rather than having a lecture that day, you come in, you'd have the full period would start right on time and go right to the end. Sometimes, yeah. So and you should be able to answer. So you can do them in the class. All good questions. And I will often do this. Pam will often do this, just so you see where you are with the material. I'll just throw it. We'll be giving you test questions throughout the lectures, or even before the lecture. If you can handle these, you are fine. I mean, for example, this is why we use scientific names, right? Three from the lecture last time, and there's the definition of systematics. What else? Anyway, yeah. So those are the types of questions. Since you're here early, I give you those teasers. I'll go through them again. We did just a couple of minutes. Anyway, did you notice that it was dark at 6:30 today? It's getting harder, right? That's why I throw this up here from time to time. That sun, it's not on our side at this time of the year. So you just have to make yourself get up and get to class. And if you need a phone call, just give us, your number, and we can give you a call on the way in. But it's just, again, just for your benefit. It really does. I mean, if we plotted this out over 20 years, where the grades stood in relation to class attendance, it would be a direct correlation. There's no doubt about it. And for this week, maybe next week, I will continue to post my entire lecture on my campus website. But after that, so people don't think, well, all I have to do is just look at that PowerPoint and I'm set. I'll put the PowerPoint there, but it won't have everything on there. There needs to be a reason to come to class, right? So you can get the material. Okay? So it'll be there, but I won't have all the word content necessarily. Okay. It's great to see everybody coming to class. As soon as attendance drops, it will be our first pop quiz. Oh, that's coming up. I had that little video version on it. Occasionally we'll play song music in here to liven things up too. Mechanically oriented songs, all of them hits. Amazing how many Bach-y themes have made it to the top 10, as you will see. Okay, it is time to begin. Again, stressing this point is really, I think, very useful, and I believe, to be here. You do have lab this week. One thing I didn't stress, but it's very important, make sure you go to the lab you are signed up for, okay? Now, if something comes up that week, a wedding or something, or you're sick, that make sure it's possible to switch. But you'll check with us in advance, let your TAs know, you have their emails, because the lab is set up for a certain number of people. We can't all of a sudden have 30 people go to the lab on Friday because we can't accommodate you. So you need to go to the lab you're in. That lab is at Rawls Hall. Look over the lab before class. Other comments. By now you should have glanced at chapter 1 in your textbook. That's where I'm going to take the lecture from today and then part of chapter 2. You never have to read in advance everything, or even after I'm done. As I said, I'm going to take my questions, Pam will take her questions from what we lecture on, but that material can be very helpful in explaining materials. And this is your textbook. I don't really care what edition you use or what the shape it is in. You don't need a brand new textbook. The fourth or third are fine. Even the second you can probably get away with. Laboratory exercise is a PDF. This is the optional book, and I'll just stress again, your TAs will have that out when you go to lab this week. You don't need to bring any money or anything to lab. You can look at it. You can get a sense, oh yeah, that might be cool. I might want that. And then next week, they will compile all the orders and your money or whatever, and then we'll order them, okay? And again, a grading scale is a 10-point scale. Now, one thing we didn't mention last time, and that we want you to attend as part of your grade, Pam and I have to figure out how many points this will be worth, but I think we can just make it like part of the first test or something like that, or extra credit, or we'll figure this out. But please put this on your calendars, okay? Because this will be really, we think, very special. This will be on November 16th. The time is not exact, but say roughly, it's going to be in the evening, maybe 6-ish, 6:30. And what we're going to do is have the world premiere, you'll get to be there for it, of an event we've been working on for a long time now, and it's something we're calling One Tree, One Planet, where we're trying to be able better to convey the importance of biodiversity, using the tree of life as a metaphor, to everybody, to the public. Okay, and a lot of people think the tree of life is like a cosmetic or a hair product or something like that. Okay, the tree of life is what we want to think about. It's the connections between all living things. So there'll be 2 parts to it. Well, this is the back of the Harn Museum, which is over next to the Phillips Center, Powell Hall, where the butterfly rainforest is. This is looking at the back of it. Let me turn the lights off so you can get it. So we have, we're working with a projection artist who's world famous, and this will be an interactive projection of the tree of life on the back of that. That's, we're just trying to give you it'll be interactive. You'll be able to sit, hopefully there'll be some computer screens out, and you'll be able to look at it, and your face will turn up on the screen at the point where Homo sapiens is. There'll be music. And eventually there'll be an app where you'll be able to interact with it on the phone. The artist that we're working with this is real. She did this not with the tree of life, but trying to project actual forests of real trees on monuments in Paris during the climate summit. So here's someone with their phone, and they're putting their name on the Eiffel Tower with a plant. So we're going to try to do the same thing with the tree of life. What you're going to see is the first rendition of this, and eventually we hope that we'll be able to take it to a broader audience. The second part will be an indoor movie on the tree of life, and we have seen the initial phases of it now. Pam and I have been working on it through the summer, and the characters are pretty cool. We think it's going to be pretty cool. So we want you to be there, okay? And I hope you'll enjoy it. But please just put it on your calendars for now, and we'll say more about it as we get closer, and you'll probably see press announcements and stuff like that, okay? All right, for those who camped out early, it was really nice to see there were about 20 people in the hall, slept overnight. We already went over some possible test questions, and we'll throw these up from time to time. If you can get these, you say, whoa, I must be doing okay. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, you say, whoa, I better study. So, in Theobroma cacao, what is the name of the genus? Theobroma. Okay, that's the easy part. What's the name of the species?
Theobroma cacao.
Theobroma cacao. All right, do not just say cacao, you'll get it wrong. By the way, this is the scientific name for chocolate. And it's a great scientific name. The name of the genus literally means theology, God, broma, food of the gods. For all you chocoholics, is that a great scientific name or what? Somebody was really with it. Okay, you should know why we use scientific names. You should be able to define systematics and the objectives of systematics. This is all from last time. I'm not going to go through it again, but here's why we use scientific names. Not to intimidate students. because there are very good reasons. And here is the definition of systematics, and here are the objectives of systematics. At least plants, this would be, I mean, if you're working on animals, then you'd want to inventory the world's fauna. So this is a little biased towards studying plants, but you get the idea, right? We're trying to inventory all the organisms that are out there. All right, so we are focused on plants, and one thing we should do first, what is a plant? Okay, so here's how we're going to define plant. We are going to focus in this class on what we call green plants. There are other plants out there. There are red algae. There are brown algae. We're not dealing with those. Okay, we're going to focus on green plants, and there are several distinct groups of things that are called green algae that are in the green plants, and then there are all the land plants or green plants, and we're going to go over those. We're going to spend a lot of time going through all of these different groups here. But here is a possible test question. What do green plants share? What do they all have in common? They have chlorophylls A and B. Some other photosynthetic lineages only have A. They have both A and B. These are the photosynthetic pigments, okay? They store food as starch. And they have the presence of what are called two anterior whiplash flagella. You can amaze your friends with this later on today. Now, they don't have to be there in all cells. And actually, some have lost them. They're sometimes just present in the reproductive cells for many of our green plants. But here is just in case you want a review of flagella, a whiplash flagella looks like this. It's straight, it's for power. There's another type of flagellum here. It is shown with an electron microscope, and it looks like tinsel, doesn't it? Like you put on your tree, so that's why it's called a tinsellated flagellum. It means it's decorated, it has these little lateral projections. So green plants have this, not this. So this is what I want you to remember, the characteristics of green plants. We will use a term, I'll come back to those later on, but these are features that they share. And you will get to see more and more diagrams of this, like this. This is a phylogeny. And here these characters are, as little check marks or tick marks on this tree. These are the characters that I just mentioned, right? Uniting all green plants. And then we're going to go through these different groups of green plants. And every time we go over a group, I'll say, oh, okay, now we're going to go over the land plants, and the land plants share these features. Okay, so you're going to get to see a lot of these. Right? Is everybody good? So right here, that's where we are. The features that unite green plants. Yes.
Are we going to need to know specifically like which ones are more related to each other, like memorize and function?
Eventually, yes. We will get into, like we'll go into the seed plants, and you'll get to find out what the gymnosperms are and how the gymnosperms are related to each other. And the flowering plants, we'll spend most of our time there because they're the biggest group, and you'll get to learn a lot of cool flowering plants and how they're related, okay? So yes, and that's perfect. You set me up for this. I showed this last time, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to sort of go through in an orderly fashion, an evolutionary fashion, the different groups of green plants. And you're going to get to know them better. All right? Here's an overview of green plant diversity. Okay, so let's get back to some of these objectives from last time. We're inventorying the world's flora. I think I mentioned last time that we really have so many undiscovered, undescribed species. So there are some people in our field who are out there cataloging, collecting, describing new species. The other ones I want to so I think probably that one maybe is pretty clear, self-explanatory. The others I'll spend a little bit more time on today, okay? So technical keys. You probably say, I have no idea what's a technical key. So historically, and you will get exposed to this in the lab this week, people would use technical books that had information like this, so that with all these decisions you had to make, so you would say, okay, here's an example from your book. Are the leaves opposite? That means across from each other. Or are the petals acuminate? I have no idea what that means. Okay. Or are they alternate and the petals rounded? So there's all this terminology, You know, if it's one, then you would go on to decide between those two. If it's down here, this bottom couplet, you go here, and then maybe here. And eventually, you know, you get to the correct answer. Oh, I did it, whoa, woo, woo, woo. So you will learn how to do that. It's a skill, there's a lot of terminology involved. But someday, I've been, you know, it's amazing. Pam and I have been saying this for decades, and I know this is the early Star Trek, before you were born, but you guys all know Star Trek, and they have the tricorder, right? You know, no matter where they are, they can say, life form, blah, 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 blah. We always say, wow, you know, someday, wouldn't it be cool if we have something like that, where, you know, here's Spock saying, the study of biodiversity is my life. He didn't really say that. But of course, you know, he wanted to say that. Because someday, wouldn't it be cool if you could just take a photograph, you know, we have all have phones, right? I find out what it is, okay? That day is virtually here, which is really cool because using these technical keys, you know, frankly, it's rough, it's boring, you know, this is pretty cool. Wow, what is it? I know. So you'll get exposed to that, and today, in lab, you're going to get to use something that's being developed here at the University of Florida by one of our colleagues called the Map of Life. This is really neat. So you're here, well, you're not here because this is an example from Italy, but you know, you're here in Gainesville, and it will tell you, it'll give you a list of all the organisms that you would expect to see around you, okay? So outside within, say, what is it, like a 10-mile radius or something like that, so it would give you a list of the butterflies, the dragonflies. It's not really up to date, there's just too many plants. It's not, doesn't have all the plants in there, but it'll have the common trees and stuff like that. You'll get to use that in the lab today. So our ultimate goal is, you know, you'll have something like that and you'll take a picture and you say, well, it's within a 20-mile radius, it should be this. That will happen. Okay, that's going to all happen within the next 5 to 10 years. So the cool thing about that is it's going to bring systematics to everyone, okay? Everyone will be a systematist. You know, my idea is, well, you get your tricorder, you take a picture, maybe even gets a DNA sample, and, you know, it's not in the computer. You know, lights start flashing, new species, new species. Whoa, I'm famous, I discovered something new. I'm gonna run out naming after P.M. Soltis, my professor. Okay, let's go on, classification. Talk a little bit about this time, the last time, I'm sorry. Now here are some famous systematists. I showed them last time. I didn't say anything about Theophrastus, I will today. I mentioned Linnaeus and of course Charles Darwin. So both of these I'm going to mention in the context of sort of what's the traditional means of classifying, which is just simply putting things in categories for convenience, okay? Let's see, you have a hat on, you have a hat on, you have a hat on, you're all in the same group, okay? Now that doesn't mean, well, wait, we're not closely related or anything. Well, yeah, but you have hats on, so I'll put you in the same categories, okay? You have sunglasses on, you're in your own category. Anyway, so that's how people group things for several centuries. You have an orange shirt, orange shirt, orange shirt. Okay, you're over on this side of the room, you're all together. It's for convenience, and that's what people did. They wanted to organize all this amazing diversity in the world, but they just did it with characters that put things in the group. It didn't mean that they're actually closely related. And of course that all changed with Darwin. And since the time of Darwin, we've wanted to put things together that belong together because they're actually close relatives. Everybody see that distinction? So for centuries, we did what I just told you as a oh, you have sunglasses on. You're not in your alone. You have somebody in your group. Sorry, you were so close, I missed you. Okay, so that's what we've done for a long time. Everybody has, it's just part of being human to want to put things into categories, to organize the world around you. And I said this last time, we have a long history of classification. What we call primitive peoples today, they know the organisms around them, but they are not putting them into categories based on evolutionary relationships. They're doing it based on, you know, things that are usually utility. Okay, so this is important. Only recently, only since the mid-1800s, have we been attempting to classify based on evolutionary relationships. So it's amazing how long humans have been putting things into classification systems. As I said, our ancestors did that, but one of the first formal classifications was actually by this person, Theophrastus. You can see the time frame here, BC. Here is a statue of Theophrastus. And Theophrastus was an ancient Greek. I did so much that he's considered the father of botany. Ooh, that could be important. Ooh, I wonder if I would get asked on the test who the father of botany is. And if you put down Blaine Marchant, he will give you lots of points, but I will not. We will take off for that answer because the answer is Theophrastus. This is the first formal classification. But clearly this is not based on relationships. It was simply in the categories of convenience. He put things in the categories of trees, shrubs, subshrubs, and herbaceous. 4 different categories. The problem with that is that it worked just like my example of hats and sunglasses. For example, one family that you'll learn about later this semester, the rose family, has things that are in all 4 categories. So they would not be, any of those would not be put together, even though they're all closely related members of one family. Not in his system anyway. He described species. Even without a microscope, he could recognize the basic categories of plants. It's amazing what this guy was able to do. Okay, so he's the father of botany. We talked about Linnaeus last time, this system of classification, the binomials that we use, the genus, species, a specific epithet, and genus being the 2 parts of a name. Really, we'll have to bring this next time, Cam. He was a rock star in his time. I mean, you have to think of somebody like, who's a rock star right now? Throw out a name.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. I mean, he's just famous. He's not.
Okay.
He hasn't done anything, but everybody knows his name.
Yeah. So somebody that you can think of who's so famous that everybody knows, right? That would have been Linnaeus in the 1700s, and he's still a rock star in Sweden. When you land in the airport in Stockholm, there's the Linné Lounge. His picture is all over the place. So he developed really a classification system that emphasized parts of the flower, parts of the fruit. For that reason, it was called a sexual system because it relied on reproductive organs. But again, this was an artificial system. He did not put things together based on evolutionary relationships. This was pre-Darwinian, okay? So we don't use it, we use his principle of organizing, but we don't use his the system that he actually came up with, okay? The way that the way that he put plants into categories, or anyway, we didn't use that, okay. Everybody, but it was convenient, it worked, it began to make order out of all of these amazing organisms around it. Everybody okay with that? All right, so I stressed this last time. Today, now, we want our classifications to reflect evolutionary relationships, okay? That dates to 1859, the origin of species. I mean, for the same reason that you would want to be considered closely related to your brother, your sister, your aunt, your father, your close relatives, you would be people to realize you're more closely related to them than you are, to somebody who's like from a totally different part of the world. We want our classifications to reflect evolutionary relationships. So evolution is an integral part of what we do here. So here's a term. We will use this a lot. It's not a complicated term. It may seem intimidating, but we want to use the term phylogeny. This is the evolutionary history of organisms, a phylogeny. It's no different than using the word ecology. It sounds like a big word, but it's not. Everybody should know the word phylogeny, the evolutionary history of organisms. And then we're going to so we're going to figure out what our best guess of the phylogeny is, because they really are hypotheses of relationships. And then we'll base our classifications on that phylogeny. Everybody got that? Okay. This process that we're going to use. All right, so what we do today, we're going to estimate the phylogeny, and again, that's a hypothesis. That's our best guess of how we think organisms are related, and then using that tree of relationships, because they are branching patterns, as I showed you one before, we'll go over that in a bit, we're going to base our classifications on that phylogeny. Good? So that really is taking us to, so we talked about classification. We want to base it on evolutionary relationships. Well, let's talk about evolutionary relationships. We're going to do that throughout the course. And how do we determine that? What do we do? How do we construct a phylogeny? And that's what we're going to do for the rest of the class. We're going to spend some time on building how you construct a phylogeny. So here's a very early phylogeny, and this is from Darwin's Origin of Species. I showed this last time, where he's just trying to show this branching pattern of life. Here's the origin of this group. He's trying to show that some things go extinct. They don't make it to the very top, which is what's alive today. And then there's this beautiful quote here where really he refers to, this is an earlier reference to the idea of all organisms being connected in a great tree of life. And that's a phylogeny, the tree of life. It's a phylogeny of all life. And then people went from there to try to say, well, wow, what would that tree of life look like? And here's a famous German biologist, Ernest Haeckel. You don't have to remember his name, but he made some really cool depictions of how he thought all life might be related. I just think these are so awesome. And they're not too bad, actually. You know, you've got plants, you've got these protists here, and animals here, and some of those categories are pretty cool. And then finally, today, you know, just in the last few years, we have the first rough draft. This is still, you know, a work in progress of how all of the 2.3 million or so species named so far might be related. I showed you that last time. So that's sort of a quick 5-minute history, but let's actually do it. Let's start making phylogenies. Let's start building phylogenies. So phylogeny 101. Sorry, we have to have some terms, but these are very important terms, and we're going to use these terms very commonly through the semester. So in your textbook, you will sometimes see the word cladogram. It's the same thing as a phylogenetic tree. So you can use cladogram, phylogenetic tree, phylogeny. You'll often hear those used interchangeably. Phylogenetic tree, cladogram, the same thing. Now, if you really are cool and you want to talk to your friends about your latest phylogeny, hey, what do you think about that topology for the gymnosperms? And your friend would say, wow, you know, I did not know that ginkgo and cycads were, you know, like down at the base of the gymnosperms. That part of the topology surprised me. The topology, see how I use that? That's how you can use that when you're trying to amaze your friends at lunch. It's the pattern of branching. It's the shape of the tree. You're actually talking about characteristics or aspects of the tree when you talk about the topology of the tree. Again, we're going to use all of these in complete sentences as we go through examples. This is a very important term, very important. And that is the idea of a monophyletic group, which sounds like a lot, but you'll use it so much you won't even think about it anymore, which is the very same thing as a clade. It's easier to say clade. It's okay to say clade. It's okay to say monophyletic group. They mean the same thing. But do not say monophyletic clade. No reason. That's just like, no. You're either a clade or you're a monophyletic group. All right, so what does that mean? It's all of the descendants of a common ancestor. So I'll show you that in a little bit, but if it's up in the corner there, that is the phylogeny that I showed you for green plants. Okay? So the green plants are a clade. They all descended from a common ancestor right there. Ooh, I kind of messed up. Sorry about that. Anyway, that's the common ancestor of green plants. Okay, so they're a clade. They're a monophyletic group. All green plants taken together. Okay? All right. Now, another useful term, sister groups, which also makes sense. Sister groups are closest relatives. Like your sister, you know, they're close. Your closest relative is your sister. So we'll talk about sister groups. And you'll often hear this term lineage, and this is sort of a sequence of populations or species through time. It's an ancestor-dependent sequence of populations, a lineage. You may have used that term already. You probably maybe you know that term. So everybody good? Got those down? Okay. Let's use examples now to reinforce some of these. Okay. So here is a simple phylogeny of 3 members of the rose family that you undoubtedly know: blackberries, raspberries, and cherries. Okay? Blackberries and raspberries are more closely related to each other than either are to cherries. So that makes them sisters. They're sister groups. Now together, here's the common ancestor of all of them, and so that would make these a clade, a monophyletic group or a clade. Okay. Now I'll show you this in another slide. How do I know something is a clade? Well, one way, and I think it's very easy to use this, is that they can be removed with, if you had scissors, and you were going to cut up your textbook, you could remove them with just one cut of your scissors. One cut, you got a clade. If it takes more than one cut, it is not a clade. Let's use this as an example. Here is, you know these organisms: fish, amphibians, turtles, mammals, lizards, snakes, crocodiles, and birds. Okay, so what do we traditionally call lizards, snakes, and crocodiles? Reptiles, exactly. Reptiles, that's the name for that group. Are reptiles a clade, a monophyletic group? Can I remove them with one cut? Not unless I include the birds, right? So, so if I cut here, I have crocodiles and birds together. Whoops! I did not get these guys, so I didn't do it, right? You can't do it because this is one of the things that came out of building these trees and relationships. You probably know this, that that birds are actually, what are the closest relatives of birds? Dinosaurs, right? People say dinosaurs went extinct. No, they didn't. Birds, they are a lineage, they're derived from within the other dinosaurs that went extinct. Anyway, this is where they would be in this simple tree. This is why what we traditionally called reptiles, lizards, snakes, and crocodiles are not a clade, because birds are part of that group. Got it? Okay, so this is the, that's how you get, this is what, they come up? Back, oh, there we go. That's how you would have to get reptiles. You'd have to have 2 cuts of the tree, which means they're not a clade. Got it? Okay, clades, 1 cut. Clades, 1 cut. Can be removed by 1 cut of the tree. All right, what am I trying to get to here? I think I just did that. Okay. All right, here are our terms again. So now what I want to do is, how do we build trees? Okay, so what we're going to use, and you're going to do this in lab, is that you're going to use characters. Okay, you're going to have a set of characters. This is how we learn to build trees. And then you're going to have states of those characters. I'm going to give you a very simple example in a movie that I'm going to show you, but let's just give a very simple example. We could use flower color. Okay, flower color would be the characteristic that we're going to look at, but the states could be red, white, blue, different colors. Those are the states. The character is flower color. All right, you could have as a character the stem. Is the stem, that's the character. The states could be, is it woody or is it herbaceous? Okay, and DNA can be a character, and that is the most useful character today in building trees, and we will spend more time on that. You'll see why that has really transformed the field of systematics. But right now, how do I actually build trees? What do I need? I need characters, and those characters have to have states. If I have a character and it has only one state, it is not going to allow me, there's nothing that I can use to divide things up with. It doesn't help me. All right, so what we're going to try to do is, this is actually from your textbook. where it's trying to show you, these are plant lineages. Each one of these is a plant. And it initially starts out with, if we just look at this, these are petals are white. And then if there's a change over here from the petals, let's see, let's go here. Okay, yeah, petals white. Then over here, there's a change to petals red, where you get those red squares. Okay, what it's showing you is how a new lineage, a new entity, species, could evolve over time, just by going through years, and these are populations, and each one of these is an individual. This is a harder way to look at it than using the famous bouncing bunnies. Okay. Hold on, you'll see what I mean. I hope. Let's see if we can get this to work. All right, this is something that we developed a number of years ago.
Different life forms.
There's a little thing on the tree of life. Can everybody hear that? But it'll eventually get to characters.
Tiniest bacteria.
Hopefully this will be just a
To the
little.
largest whales. The extraordinary diversity of life fills every habitat. Scientists estimate that there are well over 10 million species living on the planet today, but less than 2 million of these have been discovered so far. From the very beginning of life, all organisms have been connected through common ancestors in a single history of descent, the great tree of life.
The tree of life is, to me, one of the most amazing concepts that humans have ever come up with. The tree is a set of genetic connections. It's a description of the relatedness of all organisms. This tree is over 3.5 billion years old, and to think that all living creatures are but leaves on the tips of this tree and deeply interconnected through their genes is, to me, just an astounding concept.
Today, scientists are embarked on a great new age of discovery, charting all of the branches of the tree of life.
This was a real species that existed.
To discover the shape of the tree of life, teams of scientists
I don't know
around the
those guys.
globe are gathering data in the field and in the laboratory to reconstruct the genealogical relationships that link all life forms, past and present. Utilizing new methods and cutting-edge technologies, scientists are meeting the enormous challenge of discovering the millions of branches that make up the tree of life.
Many groups of organisms have a very complex ancestry, and we're trying to record events that happened very fast a long time ago, and that's very, very challenging.
In his book, The Origin of Species, published in 1859, biologist Charles Darwin compared life on the planet to a great tree. Darwin realized that the process of evolution implied shared ancestry, going all the way back to the beginning of life. Ever since Darwin, scientists have attempted to reconstruct the historical relationships among species. Today, evolutionary biologists refer to the tree of life as a phylogeny.
Phylogeny is a history. It's a history of branching within a lineage, within a group of species.
There we go.
How
Characters
does this
and
branching
characteristics.
occur? Imagine a population of bunnies continually reproducing, giving rise to one generation after another. At some point, a river changes its course, creating two separate bunny populations and preventing them from reproducing with one another. Later, in one of these populations, a baby pops up with a mutation, a new feature represented here by the color purple. It turns out that purple bunnies are increasingly successful in this environment, and soon the entire population on that side of the river is made up of purple bunnies. Sometime later, imagine that this population of purple bunnies is split in two again, in this case by the appearance of a volcano. In one of the now separated populations, a new mutation results in a red-colored bunny. Red-colored bunnies do well in that environment, and eventually, all bunnies on that side of the volcano are colored red. This process of successive splitting generates a branching pattern, a tree, along which we can trace the evolution of new characteristics. In this case, from tan to purple, and later, from purple to red. The search for the underlying branching pattern of the
Okay.
tree of life typically begins with the study of the